The lesson, I believe, is this. Counselors advise, but presidents decide. The disaster of the Bay of Pigs taught Kennedy that he must never defer to his advisors unless he was fully persuaded that the military recommendations he received were viable and had a high probability of success. This was a great contrast to how Lyndon Johnson would go on to conceive of Vietnam. This was a great contrast to how Johnson exercised his own authority as commander-in-chief. Bundy liked to remark on the very dramatic difference between Kennedy and Johnson as commander-in-chief. To Bundy, Kennedy was dispassionate, removed, analytical, aloof. Johnson was an entirely different commander-in-chief because he was an entirely different political actor. He was a creature of the Senate, as Bundy liked to point out. He had a proclivity, in fact, a brilliance to enmesh his own political interest with the political moment. While Kennedy sought to shatter the consensus for ground forces, Johnson sought to build it and to make it durable. And we see the apotheosis of this in 1965. The moment has come. We are either going to find some way to extricate from Vietnam or we're going to go in. And if we go in, we're going to go in big. And it was during that time, during those decisions in the spring and early summer of 1965, where Bundy reflected on how disastrously the policymaking process worked and on how the process of deliberation collapsed. In 1964, no decisions were made. An election was coming up, and for Johnson, the imperative was, as Bundy said, win, win, win. Not in South Vietnam, but in the election against Barry Goldwater. He said, I'm just a trustee until I win this election. I need this mandate. So no decisions are made on Vietnam in 1964, not to escalate, not to extricate, not to negotiate, not to possibly get out of there. But in 1965, the moment has come to make this decision. And as Bundy observed, we found ourselves arguing over a number and not over a use. How many troops should go in, not what they should do, not the military strategy that would govern the deployment. Johnson sends Robert McNamara to South Vietnam in June of 1965. He has a secret directive. Talk to Westmoreland and find out what is the lowest number of troops I need to approve to maintain a consensus among my senior military advisors. The number he comes back is quite a large one, as Bundy observed. It's 44 battalions. And that became the debate of the summer of 1965. Not whether you could win in an open-ended war of attrition against the insurgency in South Vietnam, but the size of this deployment, 44 battalions. Bundy believed that this was all a terribly tragic missed opportunity. 1964, a year of non-decisions. 1964, a year when they could have applied what he referred to as some imagination and some creative thought to the problem of Vietnam. All of it is in stasis. And then when they get to 1965, there is no real debate about whether we can prevail in South Vietnam. There's only a debate about the size of the troop deployment that will go in. And as I think we look back on this period, what is most notable is the quality of conviction, the overwhelming conviction that we had to go into South Vietnam whether we had a plausible prospect of success or not. We had to go in and initiate bombing, despite the fact that every single intelligence estimate that Bundy had informed him that it would fail. The Sigma 1 military exercises that the military conducted, the Sigma 2 exercises in which Bundy participated, all of the intelligence analyses said it would fail. It would just harden the resolve of the insurgency. But they went for this decision to initiate bombing. Immediately it results in the first ground combat forces going in. And between the period of March of 1965 to July, we go from 3,500 ground forces to a deployment of approved forces of more than 175,000. That's in the period between March and July. As Bundy said, we never really asked, would it work? We were debating over a number and not a use. And as he looked back on this period, I think it was that missed opportunity to have that debate that Bundy most regretted. And the lesson that I draw from that, based in part on Bundy's experience, is that conviction without rigor is a strategy for disaster. The conviction that we must not lose in Vietnam, not evaluated against the light of what would be plausible, what could be successful, was ultimately tragic for the United States.